Once upon a time, there was a girl, and she lived in a semi-arid plain where the smell of sage and saltbush were pungent, and at night coyotes could be heard roaming the hills behind the houses, invisible and wild. She used to wander in the places where houses had not yet been built, and the rattlesnakes would show up in late summer, and the children had to be careful not to step into their coiled bodies in the strong sunshine that pulled the snakes out into it. And the girl used to think how she wanted, more than anything, and from an early age, to live without restraint. And she wasn't certain what course her life would take. She was 8 and only just beginning to read books. But she already had this feeling, an inkling, that in life freedom, like the perfumed dry air of Los Angeles, and like the sea in the blue distance and the yowl of coyotes, was something. Then I'm pretty sure she forgot whatever it was she intuited. Perhaps she never thought it at all. It was merely a sensation, unnamed, unthought out, and it fell back into her mind, like stones sinking down to the ocean floor. In her forgetting, she read a lot of books. Westerns, romances, historical adventures, futuristic fantasies. And she loved, over and over again, the magic carpet ride of stories, which took her out of her house in the Santa Monica Mountains to distant places in her mind and medieval Japan, and the fantastic, sentimental renderings of the Wild West, and down the streets in Marseille, France, where ladies wore fashionable clothes and in spacecraft also adrift. And so she learned to love books for their entertainments, their ability to take her out of herself, out of her family, beyond her parents' continual arguings and the bitchy girls at school, and homework and filling in the blanks about the succession of the kings of England and the presidents of the United States, and out of her loneliness and sometimes unhappiness. She loved books because of this. They took her away. And when she would finish a book, she'd come back to herself, as if waking from a long sleep, and blinking her eyes, drowsy and disconcerted, she would see her pink bedroom, her 2 old dogs in the yard, her sister and parents watching television news in the other room, and the war in Lebanon on the screen every day in those days, the early evening sun's redness in the sky. So, time passes, and she was in junior high school, then she was in high school. She was still staying up until 2 and 3 in the morning, reading the romances, the westerns, the historical novels, and traveling with them, leaving and returning again and again. By now you are perhaps wondering what the hell this has to do with your graduation today. A silly girl, a little lonely and awkward, sometimes withdrawn, and sitting by herself in her closet or lying underneath the covers of her bed and reading books with a flashlight until late into the night, while her parents fought and battles raged in her mother's natal country, and a bitchy girl kicked her ass next to the tetherball court, and her grandmother died and her cousin was murdered in Newport. Although perhaps you were in some manner like this child, and found in books a magical retreat, departure off into other places, inside of the consciousness of a character on Mars and Kyoto. But now the girl in the story is 14 and she's in 10th grade. She's in English class and she's been told she must read a book by William Faulkner. And she already thinks that this ride was probably too hard, too strange, because she didn't like what she was asked to read in 9th grade English and didn't in fact read it, but bought Cliff Notes and read the plot in summary of Romeo and Juliet. Now, however, for some reason, she gives the book a go. She picks it up and she reads the first 6 pages, and she's confused and startled, and she thinks how she doesn't like it for that reason, and because it is difficult. But she determines to continue reading, or something in the book inexplicably and not by the seduction of narrative she's used to draws her in. And then she is reading the character Darling's 2nd chapter in this book of voices where manifold characters speak, one from the dead in a language strange, particular, and peculiar. And while reading Darrell's 2nd installment, she feels, perhaps for the first time, as if he is talking directly to her. Darrell is speaking, lonely and quiet and observant and brave and afraid, and he is saying something that the girl knows, but has never in her life heard spoken or seen written, but she nevertheless knows. As if some of her own soul's quiet fears, cravings, desires, and unlanguaged longings are in some manner articulated by this fictional character in a novel. She doesn't know what has just happened exactly. It's different from the magic of story that she is familiar with. It's something in the language, in the words themselves. And how does Darrell know? She wonders, how does Darrell know her? Perhaps you've had such an experience while reading a book. When a book does something to you which is difficult to articulate but felt in your whole body. When, while reading, the hairs stand up on the back of your neck, or a shudder runs along the shoulder blades and down the spine. It's a recognition of it. And she had never had it before that she is aware of. And you could probably guess how the rest of this story goes, like a Cliff Notes summary. The girl becomes a writer. But why do I tell it today to you, Colleen, Summer, Paul, and Chelsea, who sit here upon the completion of your master's degrees in creative writing? To you, Carla, Andrew, John, and Holly, who go on now to finish your books and undertake others, and more than after that. To you, Valerie, Marnie, Christine, and Eve, who have heeded the calling of the word and who came to Goddard with a dream to write something, to make something from your imaginations and minds, out of nothing really, out of the ether, which is everything, after all. Why do I tell it? To remember and remind you, and even myself, how books do something that only they can do. This meeting of the reader's consciousness directly against and inside the books. And how that experience, both the girls' earliest ones of the magic carpet ride the story takes us on, and the possibility for an awakening into wider and deeper thinking and knowledge, is so beautiful, so important, so vital, for culture, for ourselves, for posterity. Literary art is, in this way, a very important kind of service. I guess what I want to say to the 12 of you is what I say to myself every day. Do your work. And listen to your deepest inklings. Perhaps they occur to you at random moments as whimsies, but you eventually begin to think them because in your inklings, in your deep and abiding intuition, your work rises up for you. And this is the work that only you can do. This is your plot of land to till, as Emerson said. And so, of course, envy is always a form of ignorance, as is comparing ourselves to others, either living or dead, because we are here to do our work. We can only do that, and to tell the stories we feel compelled to tell, obsessed to relay and write the poems, the plays, the memoirs. I don't think there can be any greater life, or any more free, than the life where an individual gets to do what she loves, what he cares about deeply, without laws or politics or governments or social mores and historical restrictions to hinder him too extremely. You have this opportunity. In the end, it doesn't take much to write, our pens, computers, some paper. Mostly it is our minds, quieted in time, and perhaps some walks around outside in the wood or on a beach in a bustling city to clear it and let the word come through. So I'm thinking out loud here, and I'm thinking about stories and the beginnings of language. When was it? And what is it? And sometimes when I roam the hills of Berkeley, where I live, and when I'm taking a break from my day's duties, I think how language has come from the earth and is of it, like air and seawater and rodents and the orange-chested robins in the red berry bush in my backyard. And I think about the times we live in, and of the great word, which is now also put to the use of selling underarm deodorant and deep-fried potatoes and fashionable shoes for ladies with 5-inch heels to totter upon, and wars in other places, and for bank loans and banking lies and politics, politicians' speeches and talking heads who say they say the news and will tell it you every night on television and as lies. And I think about you who listen to me right now, as I wrote this 2 weeks ago in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep. A missive to now, just like Emerson and Faulkner still whisper in my ears, and of how the word and stories await us if we listen for them, if we open our cosmic ears to them, our foreheads to the earth, our faces submerged in the sea. I think it is our duty, our service, to do the work of the word, to tell the truth truly, as old Mr. Emerson keeps exhorting each time I open up his essays, to listen to the quiet below the hullabaloo, the quiet inside of us, to our inklings, our small, insistent passions, our strange and incoherent and bold dreams of 3:30 in the morning, when perhaps we are no different than the men and women who sat around fires at night 30 and 40,000 years ago with their once upon a time. And in the labyrinth of the word, the hinges of drama, the magic carpet ride of story, the terrible and inexplicable vibration of a poem, at the back of the mind, behind reason and what we think we know, there, I think, is where we begin to understand. In symbolic form, encoded in the old singing, our contribution, perhaps our only contribution, I cannot say, but I think that it is the works of art, music, dance, painting, and our many thousand years writing to one another about why we are here, who we are, and how and what all is. Darrell said to me when I was 14 years old in Mr. Faulkner's book, quote, "In a strange room you must empty yourself for sleep, and before you are emptied for sleep, what are you? And when you are emptied for sleep, you are not. And when you are filled with sleep, you never were. I don't know what I am. I don't know if I am or not. But how often have I lain beneath rain on a strange roof, thinking of home?" End quote. 2 days ago, I arrived at Port Townsend, and as I always do, I walked up into the hill behind the houses and into the wood. As I crested the hill, I saw a gray animal staring out at me. It was early in the morning, and no one was about, and it was only me and this wild creature, a coyote, who gazed down the long meadow at the woman walking. And when I saw the coyote, I was pulled out of my thinking about the graduation speech I was going to deliver in 2 days' time, into that now. The animal, the woman, the bright blue sky and sea beyond, the spruce and hemlocks. And I thought about how I should write that also, tell you how I saw the coyote that I never saw as a girl, only heard. It must be a sign, I thought. Let me write it down quickly before it disappears into ether. Congratulations to you. You have completed something, you have made strides. Now you must keep doing it. Do your work. It is there for you, lies waiting, like stones at the bottom of the sea, in need only of the hands to raise it. Thank you.